Hello everyone, my name is Mattia Atzori and I'm a postdoc researcher for NFN Neutrovergata section in Rome. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of Neutrinos from Home 2025 for their invitation, and I'm very happy to be here to discuss with you a global fit of CEvNS data in order to explore the frontiers of the standard model and search for new physics. Here is the roadmap of the seminar. I will start by discussing the phenomenology of coherent elastic neutrino-nucleus scattering, a process known as CEvNS. I will discuss the cross-section of this process and describe its main feature. Then I will present the low-energy neutrino sources that can be exploited to observe CEvNS. Then I will move to the phenomenology of combined analysis, but to do so I will need to introduce the dataset and measurements available in the world, which will be the main actor of this presentation. And finally, I will describe the implication for the standard model physics and beyond. Here I'm reporting a few examples like nuclear physics, electroweak physics, and searches for a new mediator. This presentation builds upon a lot of CEvNS references, which I'm listing here, and they have been conducted in collaboration with the phenomenology group to which I belong. And if you want to learn more, you can check our website or just scan the QR code to learn more about us and our studies. Okay, what is this process? CEvNS is a pure weak neutral current process that was predicted in 1974 by Freedman, which predicted that a neutrino could interact coherently with an entire nucleus. So it is mediated by the Z0 boson, and the coherency means that the scattering amplitude is the sum of the amplitudes over all the nucleons, which lead to an enhanced cross-section. However, the single outcome of the interaction is a very small nuclear recoil, which is very difficult to detect, and it is the only observable of this process. Here I'm just recalling what happens when we have neutrinos with different energies. If we have a neutrino with very high energy, then it is going to interact with the single constituents of the nucleus, and this will lead to an inelastic process. As an example here, we have that a neutron is emitted by this neutrino interaction, and the de Broglie wavelength is much smaller compared to the nuclear size. When the neutrino energy decreases, then the scatter is not totally coherent, but the de Broglie wavelength gets bigger, while when we are going to explore the very low energetic regime, then the de Broglie wavelength of the Z0 boson is bigger than the nuclear size, and this leads to the coherence condition. So coherence occurs whenever the de Broglie wavelength of the Z0 exceeds the nuclear size. The CEvNS cross-section is quite well known within the standard electroweak theory. It depends on some constants, some kinematic factors, but a very important quantity is the one inside the square brackets, which is the so-called weak charge of the nucleus, which describes the strength of the interaction of the neutrino with the whole nucleus. It depends on some very important couplings, namely the neutrino coupling with both protons and neutrons, which encode some important electroweak parameters, like the weak mixing angle at low energy. So those are the three level value of the coupling. What we can see is that the neutrino coupling of the neutrino-neutron coupling is much bigger compared to the neutrino-proton coupling, because because this one, so the neutrino-proton coupling is suppressed by the weak mixing angle. This means that the CEvNS cross-section is roughly proportional to the number of neutrons squared inside the nucleus. Moreover, here we also recognize the nuclear fall factors, which account for the loss of coherence when the neutrino energy increases. Okay, so the coupling that we discussed previously are at 3 level, while the radiative correction play a crucial role in the CEvNS process. So as an example, here I'm reporting a one-loop diagram which involves the exchange of 2 W bosons and 1 lepton of the same flavor of the neutrino. And such diagrams describe standard model photon-mediated neutrino interaction. The strength of this interaction is the neutrino surge radius, which is the only neutrino electromagnetic property predicted to be non-zero in the standard model. The neutrino charge radius is responsible for a modification of the neutrino-proton coupling by means of this shift here reporting in this formula. And given that the neutrino charge radius is different for the different neutrino flavor, we also have that the CEvNS cross-section acquire a flavor dependence. There is also another effect, which is the fact that when the experiment is performed, the momentum transfer different from zero. This needs to be accounted in principle. Okay, moreover, CEvNS can also be taught as a microscope for nuclear physics, because as we said, the finite size of the nucleus plays a crucial role in the interaction. In fact, we can describe the form factor as the Fourier transform of the nuclear density distribution. By definition, the form factors are smaller than 1 and they are responsible for a suppression of the 7th cross-section. Here there is a point because the nuclear neutron distribution is poorly known. However, neutrinos can be used as a microscope in the sense that the average nuclear neutron radius can be a free parameter of the theory, and we can see how big is the neutron distribution inside the nucleus, inside the nuclei, in order also to determine the neutron skin, which is the fact that a very heavy nucleus, which have more neutrons compared to protons, will usually exhibit a neutron skin. We can also understand that the 7th cross-section is proportional to the number of neutrons squared. However, if we have a very big nucleus, due to the kinematic, the available parameter space will be also very small. So this means that 7th signal are actually the faintest signal from the strongest neutrino interaction. Because if you have a very big nucleus, the cross-section is big, but then the maximum nuclear recoil energy available is going to be very small. So 7 searches require also low threshold experiment. Here we are going to analyze the low energy neutrino sources that have been exploited to observe 7s. First neutrino source that I would like to mention is pion decay at rest. Here we have a proton hitting a mercury target, and within this nuclear cascade there are pions which are produced and they decay, producing prompt muonic neutrino emission, then a delayed antimuonic neutrino and electronic neutrino flavor. So we have this is a pulsed beam with a well-defined time structure, and the neutrino energy is up to 50 MeV. Then we have nuclear reactors, which produce a very intense and a very intense flux of low energy neutrinos, which are produced through beta decay at reactor power plants. And then we have the sun, which due to the phenomenon of flavor convection and oscillation, we have at Earth the neutrino flavor, which consists of all flavors. Here just let me highlight some pro and cons of the different sources. For pion decay at rest, we have higher neutrino energy compared to the other sources, which also enables the study of nuclear physics. We have a very powerful background rejection, and we have true neutrino flavor available. The drawback is that there are few facilities in the world, and the uncertainty of the neutrino flux is quite big. Regarding nuclear reactor, however, the neutrino energy is lower, which enable one to study the full coherence regime, which also is very good to study different standard model scenarios. And the drawback is that there is limited background rejection power. Very low threshold is required because the neutrino energy is smaller. And there is also uncertainty, intrinsic and theoretical uncertainty in the neutrino flux. Regarding the sun, we have again lower neutrino energies compared to pion decay at rest, and it enables the study of the full coherence regime. Then we are also sensitive to the tau flavor, while at reactors we only have electronic neutrinos. But we also need the tone scale experiment, and we need to go underground, so we need to consider also dark matter experiment. Regarding the datasets which are available in the world, the coherent collaboration is leading the field because they observed 7s for the first time in 2017, and they reported a few years ago a dataset with the same detector but an increased statistic with about 12 sigma, which is the dataset with the strongest significance so far, and it is consistent with the standard model. Then they also reported an observation with argon and this year on germanium, even though in this case there is a small tension with the standard model. In total, we have about 507 events. Then if we move to reactor, we have the observation by the CONUS Plus collaboration, which was also published this year in Nature. And then we have upper limit from Texono and IGEN. And now we have a total of about 800 events. 900 events. While when we also consider solar neutrinos, we have the indications from the Xion and Ton and Panda X collaboration, which are actually dark matter experiment, direct search dark matter experiment underground, which feature ton scale xenon detector. And adding all together, we get about 1007 event. And if you also want to learn more about solar neutrinos, you can also have a look at Michela Sesto's talk. First thing that we can do is to look for consistency among 7's data. so which is reporting here in this paper, and it is the first joint analysis of all available CEvNS data in the world, so both consisting all the data from coherent, cesium, argon, germanium, reactor data, and solar neutrinos, using a unified scheme for neutrino flux and the theory input, the additive correction, etc. Just recalling that at reactors we have only electronic flavored neutrino, while at coherent we have two flavors, and from the sun we have all the three flavor neutrino flavor. We can check if the data are in agreement with the standard model, and the answer is yes. Moreover, regarding the top flavor, the solar data enable us only to place an upper limit on the strength of the CEvNS cross-section for the top flavor. Okay, so far we understood that CEvNS is a standard model process, but the signature in the data are not manifesting any deviation from the standard model physics. So this is an example of a spectrum that we usually obtain from the data. Once we remove all the background, we have the NXS counts as a function of the nuclear recoil energy, and the CEvNS standard model can be roughly described qualitatively as an exponential. So this means that if we want also to have a very big statistics, one goal is to lower the threshold, and lowering the threshold usually allows for having an enhancement of the number of events. So this is one of the goals of the Nucleus collaboration, at which I am part of the Nucleus collaboration, and we are achieving extremely exceptionally low thresholds, which will enable, we hope, for precision measurement of the CEvNS spectrum in a region which was not accessed by other experiments. Okay, so if we now want to study the effect of different electroweak parameters, we can try, for instance, to shift the Weinberg angle, and this is almost a constant shift of the total event rate, while if we have the neutrino charge radius, the effect is very, very similar. And depending on the sign of the neutrino charge radius or the Weinberg angle, we can have both a reduction in the number of events or an enhancement. While when we want to study nuclear physics, we have a suppression of the number of events for increasing nuclear recoil energy, which are exploring the region where the nuclear structures start to play a role, while nuclear physics do not affect the low energy part of the spectrum that we have. For the moment, only coherent have been able to put meaningful constraints on nuclear physics, while the new mediator model are usually responsible for a very strong distortion of the expected event rate, and an enhancement at very low energies is expected, which makes experiment such nucleus very powerful in constraining this kind of models. Okay, now we can see in the data how the nuclear structure looks like. This is actually coherent data from 2022, and what we are doing is to compute the expected rate in the presence of full coherence compared with the best fit of the data, and we found that coherent data show about 6 sigma evidence for the suppression of the full coherence due to the nuclear structure. This translates into a measurement of the neutron radius of both cesium and iodine, assuming that the nuclear radius for them is the same. So this is another radius of the two. And we also find a positive and large neutron skin from the data. Moreover, for argon, the statistics is limited, and it was possible to put only an upper limit on the neutron radius, while we found that for germanium there is a small tension with the nuclear shell model prediction regarding the neutron radius. On the other hand, as we said, solar and reactor experiment are not sensitive to the neutron radius because they are exploring the region of the full coherence. Regarding the weak mixing angle, we already said that the neutrino-proton coupling is sensitive to its value at low energies, and it is very important because it is a key parameter of the electroweak theory, which is not well known at low energies, because while there are a lot of precise measurement for high energy, also where LHC measurement, for instance, have been performed, in the low energy regime, few measurements are available. So this means that we can start populating this region with a lot of CEvNS data points, and we combining all together, we get this value for a combined analysis of both coherent and reactor data. So this value for the weak mixed inequal at low energies, which is still far from the precision of atomic parity violation experiment, which is basically leading this the precision of this red data point here. Here I'm reporting the constraints on the neutrino charge radius using CEvNS data that we have available. Here I'm reporting the two-dimensional constraint on simultaneously fitting for both the electronic and muonic flavor. And we can see that reactors are only sensitive to the electronic flavor, so we have this vertical band in this plot, while coherent is sensitive to both electronic and muonic flavor, so we have a constraint on the two parameter. And combining all together, we get this black contour in this plot at 90% confidence level, which are quite impressive because they are not so far from the precision of a global fit that we recently so that we are going to publish soon on Physical Review Letter, which includes not only CEvNS but a very big amount of neutrino elastic scattering data. Regarding solar neutrinos, those data are very valuable because they enable us to constrain the neutrino charge radius of the tawonic flavor. So this is very important to combine all of them together. In the last few minutes, I would like to present some constraints of new mediator, because basically what we can do is to consider a four-Fermi interaction Lagrangian when we are assuming that there are new mediator in the standard model and the weak charge is modified according to this quantity. So here we are introducing these epsilon values, which in the limit of high mediator mass, they are constant, so they do not depend on the momentum transfer. Okay, so those are the so-called non-standard neutrino interaction, and assuming a simplified scenario where only two non-standard neutrino interaction at zero at a time, we can also consider this flavored preserving scenario that we can obtain by considering the data both from coherent and reactors. Here is the On the other hand, it is possible to study the existence of new mediators, which are usually called Z primes, where in this case we are assuming that the mass of the new mediator is not much bigger compared to the momentum transfer, so this is the limit of new light mediator, where we have also the full propagator term inside the cross-section. So the weak charge is modified according to this formula, and a nice feature is that the cross-section is proportional to the fourth power of the coupling divided by the mass squared and the nuclear recoil squared. So this means that an experiment which is sensitive to low recoil energy is going to have a very strong and enhanced sensitivity. And here is the combined analysis of data from both reactors and coherent. There are a lot of symmetries that can be studied. If you want to learn more about other exotic model, like the one where we have L mu minus L tau symmetry, so exploiting the fact that from the sun we have also the tau flavor, you can have a look at the talk from Michela Sesto. To conclude, in this talk, we addressed the phenomenology of CEvNS, and I hope that you are now convinced that it is very powerful to test the standard model. So the CEvNS era started in 2017 from the first observation by Coherent, but it is an emerging field because we have a lot of new data, and the majority of them were released within the last 2 or 3 years. So there are unique insights into electroweak theory, searches for new physics, nuclear physics, and we are now entering the precision era, which also requires the combination of dataset. So not just improving the theoretical framework and treatment of the single datasets, but also combination of all of them. So because it is very important to highlight that there is a very strong complementarity between different data from different neutrino sources. So future is bright for CEvNS because there are a lot of experiments which are going to improve their facilities, and there are a lot of other experiments which are going to take data, and we don't know, in fact, when will be the peak of the CEvNS era. So now that I'm part of the Nucleus collaboration, we are working also to try to provide a very precise measurement of the CEvNS cross-section in a region which was not probed before. But we don't know actually what challenges lie ahead and what is yet to discover. However, what I know is that this is the ideal time to contribute. And again, if you want to learn more, you can visit our website. So thanks for